UFO fans from all over the world drive the extraterrestrial highway, a lonely stretch of road that hugs the perimeter of the base to Mailbox Road. From this location, hundreds of UFO sightings have been reported. The vast majority have been explained as lights from the latest earthbound military technology. Some, however, are harder to identify. Author Chuck Clark describes a remarkable craft he says he has seen many times.
It can go from a hover to several thousand miles an hour and back to a hover instantly. It can make very sharp right-angle turns and sharper than right-angle turns. I've seen 120-degree turns at high speed. It appears and disappears in midair, things that normal aircraft don't do.
Author and astronomer Chuck Clark has lived near the secret facility for the past 4 years, researching activity at the base for his remarkable Area 51 and S-4 Handbook. He watched the base from Whitesides and Freedom Ridge with a high-powered telescope until it was closed to the public.
I saw at first what I thought was an aerial illumination flare that was shot up from the area just south of the base at Area 51. It rose upwards from the hills and ascended to about 2,000-foot elevation and then hung motionless for several minutes. As it started slowly descending, it got down about 30 or 40 feet above the ground and hovered motionless for a couple of minutes, or well, not a couple of minutes, maybe about a minute. And then suddenly it shot without warning all along the base of the hills over here to a point in front of the higher hills. It did that movement in about 1 to 1.5 seconds. That is just under 5 miles measured distance. And that makes the speed something between 9,000 and 14,000 miles an hour based on those times. After it hovered for maybe 4 or 5 more seconds, it just vanished in place. But it did cast a glow on the ground, which means it wasn't a holographic projection. It wasn't a trick of some sort. It's unusual that you get something where, I had range. I was able to figure the speed. The speed calculated out to somewhere between 9 and a little over 14,000 miles an hour, depending on whether it was a second or a second and a half. That's the only estimate in the equation.
Mm-hmm. By the brightness of this thing, it has to be one or the other. Mm-hmm. And when it turned out that it was neither and it was nothing else that they tracked, then it became a UFO. Originally, I came from Southern California. I lived right adjacent to Vandenberg Air Force Base. And while I was living there, I was directing the Western Spaceport Observatory. And I got involved in a photographic project, which is years in length, photographing all of the main objects visible through small and medium-sized telescopes in our galaxy and other galaxies. I knew up front that they were going to have imagery, and I don't think any of their tapes were from the right angle that the object showed in their tapes. I just happened to be at the angle that the object sort of passed right behind where the rocket was going. Several of us were out there watching it, and we're all saying, well, what's that by the bird?
Is that the space shuttle crossing its path?
We kind of speculated that it was the shuttle or mirror, and just forgot about it and went about tracking the rocket and getting the images we could get. I'm a still photographer. I had the video running to document my shutter clicks. And the reason I do this is that if something should go wrong with the bird and there's an explosion or it goes off course or anything happens, they've got lots of cameras. The Air Force has lots of cameras out there, but I might have the right camera angle that lets them know what went wrong. There isn't supposed to be anything, in the airspace when you're launching a rocket. It's not a good thing. I phoned a friend of mine that was working that launch. He's one of the tracking guys, and I knew that he'd been working that morning. What was that went by the bird this morning? And was that the shuttle? He says, we don't know. We haven't run all our telemetry yet. I'll call you back in a couple days when we run it. He calls me back a couple days later and says, we don't know what it was.
The space shuttle crossing its path?
Says the shuttle was over Madagascar and Mir was someplace over Asia. They tied into the NORAD database, and so that was officially became a UFO at that point.